Let's start.
Let's start this one. Go ahead. Okay, we need to remove this. I'm hoping it will disappear.
Greetings. Today I will be talking about this paper from a company you may or may not have heard of called Anthropic. They are totally not OpenAI, considering all their staff is just ex-OpenAI members who quit because OpenAI stopped doing interpretability. They've been pumping out papers for the past 2-3 years-ish, and this is their newest landmark work. It's called Scaling Monosemanticity, Extracting Interpretable Features from Claude 3 Sonnet. This talk will be themed mostly around what I have dubbed the Golden Gate Bridge incidents. We will find out what this is in a minute. So here are our chapters. Chapter 1, Amen. What happened? Chapter 2, what was found? Chapter 4, are we safe? Chapter 5, conclusions and 6 questions.
So chapter 3 is lost.
Chapter 3 is it's cursed. Okay, what happened? Incident report. We have discovered interpretable latent vectors within LLMs. What does this mean? An LLM is a large language model. We've had language models for 50, 60 years. They've only gotten large ever since GPT-2 came out. That was 1 billion parameters. They have since gotten to about 1 trillion parameters. So they're large language models. They were thought to be super uninterpretable, black boxes, whatever, but this paper shows that they may be interpretable using their latents, which are activations. We also now have discovered a new method for guiding LLM behavior using said interpretable latent vectors. And also, as a result, we have created Golden Gate Claude. It is a combination, this research paper is a combination of 4 main ideas. The first of which is it's an old application of autoencoders, but sparse autoencoders. So slight briefing on what an autoencoder is. An autoencoder is basically a compressor. You take some input, and then it's supposed to map the identity function, returns the same thing, and then you have some kind of boundary condition in the middle. For a traditional autoencoder, it is a compressor, where you take the original high-dimensional data, you make it into low-dimensional, and then the model has to learn that low-dimensional representation well, so that it can decompress and then give you the exact same thing that you fed it into at the start. An autoencoder can be turned into a sparse autoencoder by, instead of making things small, you make things big. So the model tries to learn, if you think your data is actually higher dimensional than its encoding, you can use a wider layer in the middle than the actual input and output layers. And then you can enforce a sparsity constraint, which is some math symbol word stuff. It doesn't matter. What matters is that this is the one that Anthropic used. They used an L2 penalty on the reconstruction loss and an L1 penalty on the feature activations. What you need to understand is basically it drives most numbers to 0. So in the middle layer, so that only the important things are present. Everything else gets thrown away. Yes, and if you use an autoencoder,
you type 7.
Yeah.
There is a typo.
Oh, this one? This one is from the paper.
No, where is the one node? I didn't see a one node.
In the equation, there's a typo?
I'm sorry. This one is from the paper. I'm not sure.
What's the typo?
Oh, because L2 norm is called L1 penalty term, which is...
yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's intended to mess with my mind. We use notation of L2 norm, but call it L1. Yeah. Look at this. L2 norm. It's the L1. We redefine L2 norm now. Okay, well, I'm cool with that. That's redefined it as L1.
That's a sign up for sure, yeah.
yeah. There should be one there.
Yeah. You can use a sparse autoencoder and then train it, instead of on anything reasonable like text, images, you train it on the latents of a model. So you take a middle layer of a model, and then you kind of clunk on an autoencoder and then make it learn the features. This is what it means to learn the latents. We'll get to what this means a bit more in a second. Yes.
So you take a trained model.
Yeah. In this case, it'll be the old Claude Sonnet 3. And these are some examples of some features learned by a sparse autoencoder after it has decompressed.
We're just doing fine tuning then, right?
Bunch of them, yeah, more than it was present in your data. The second idea that was used is something called the linear representation hypothesis. I am entirely unread in the literature leading up to this discovery, but it basically says something like the features that a neural network learns becomes progressively more abstract, but also importantly, linear as you progress in the depth of a network. Let's say for an image or language, things are basically uninterpretable from a linear lens at the start. Everything is not linear, and then you progressively learn more and more abstract features until the model can now work with a linear representation of your weights.
What is it their hypothesis in that paper, or it comes from prior?
It comes from prior literature. Yeah.
And what is causal?
The higher order thing was debunked, right? I thought like this idea of higher order features, like the face example where it's like angles and then combinations of angles and then thighs and then.
I thought it was debunked. At least nobody could reproduce Quokley's paper where it first appeared. But I mean, we go back very far away. But now I think they're back to it, that they can demonstrate it somehow otherwise.
Yeah. Classic example, you have 4 embeddings, an embedding for king, an embedding for queen, embedding for man, embedding for woman. You can derive the embedding for queen by doing king minus man plus woman. So you take out the manness of a king and add a woman, and then now you have the variant of king that's a woman.
This is word to vec.
Word to vec, yes. Yeah. But word to vec was intentional, this is learned.
No, not exactly word to vec, right? Because in this case, so the LRH, right, it learns to encode like high level concepts. And so you want it to be in a linear direction in their own activation space. So that is different from what we do in the embedding space as well.
Yeah. And another idea that they use is something called the superposition hypothesis. It's basically what we mentioned before about autoencoders, or most neural networks being a form of compressor or encoder. The numbers aren't just the numbers. Each number or each latent might actually represent more than one thing simultaneously. And each feature you find might have more information than just the feature itself. So you can somehow, if you can figure out a way to split this feature up, you can maybe derive extra interpretable features from one. Another idea, this is the first thing that Anthropic did, previous paper, called dictionary learning, where you use a sparse autoencoder and try to learn the activations of an MLP to basically extract what the MLP has learned. And yeah, so you can see that in the model architecture here, the activations are of dimensionality 512, and the features they learned can be anywhere from 512 to over 100,000 features. And they did the same thing for Sonnet 3.5, Sonnet 3. And the last idea is scaling laws. So they also discovered some scaling laws for how to actually make this work, because in the example of dictionary learning here, they trained it on a very small model. Sonnet is probably in the range of over 100 billion parameters. So they need to derive some extra scaling laws to make sure that this approach of training a sparse autoencoder and the latency of a model actually works out. And they discovered that the number of features you can extract with a sparse autoencoder follows the same scaling laws as everything else. It follows a power law, a distribution, or inverse power law, I guess. Double compute for one extra feature. Yeah, more plots. Basically, it works. You just have to really, really scale up your compute, depending on your number of features and the size of your model. Okay, any questions so far?
So I do have a question. Sorry. So in the dictionary learning, what exactly are they doing? So they're just taking the activations and they're mapping it to each features.
They're just trying to train a sparse autoencoder on top, and then trying to figure out like they do normal traditional ML stuff with the features learned by the sparse autoencoder. So they'll do clustering, they'll do probably some PCA stuff to it, to basically figure out, given some input, what are similar inputs, or what would trigger the same kind of activations within the model. And if you can learn those things, then maybe you can clamp it, or maybe you can extract it, remove it, so on and so forth.
So are these features being used for training and inference as well, or are these like separate features that is just being used to activate, just being used for the activation function? But my question is like, if you're already showing the features to the activations for them to learn, will it shift the distribution to, or will it introduce a new bias uh, because of this
Yeah, good
implement?
question. The training for the sparse art encoder is done decoupled from the original pre-training. So it's not, you don't train the sparse art encoder alongside the model. The sparse art encoder is just trained on top. And maybe for fine-tuning reasons, they haven't published how they have used the sparse art encoder to be able to derive models like Golden Gate Claw and Sonnet 3.5. There is an organization that's been doing the same research on llama. The name's slipping my head. Connor Leahy is the head of the company, but I forgot the name of the company. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So, but I have a question about scaling laws.
Yes.
Like why are that's here? How does it matter?
It matters because this is a very small model. This model is specified in this slide.
Which one? The dictionary learning?
Yeah, they have two papers. The first monosemanticity paper, they trained it on a tiny one layer only transformer model. And it worked over there on a tiny dual data set, but they didn't know if it would actually scale to a model the size of like Sonnet. And in this work, they also discovered that it actually doesn't.
If they start stacking transformer layers.
Yeah. Would the approach actually scale up?
And how do they check which approach? Autoencoder, dictionary learning?
Yeah, dictionary learning.
But what is the metric? Like there is size on one axis and
loss on the other. Reconstruction loss on the features.
Of the autoencoder.
Yeah.
Reconstruction loss.
Okay. So what was found? They found a ton of interpretable features. These ones are surprisingly human interpretable. For example, the vector for the Golden Gate Bridge was found. And this is the highlights of, it's a sequence-to-sequence model. It's token by token, and each token has a certain number of, I guess, cosine similarity with the activations of the Golden Gate Bridge. And you can see that things or tokens that have high similarity with the Golden Gate Bridge have a stronger connection to the Golden Gate Bridge vector. So something like gate is extremely related to Golden Gate Bridge. Also bridge, also golden. But words like next, reach, because, so on and so forth aren't really connected. So you don't activate the model in the same direction as much. They also found the vector for brain sciences. So you see stuff about cognition, learning, science.
Well, that's what I see.
I think that might have to do with the surrounding context of the word. I'm not sure how they derived this figure entirely, but it kind of makes sense. It's like I see a Gaussian on top of the phrasing for neuroscience that change with the middle of the phrase being the
So before you go too far,
yes,
there is a trained model. They found a dictionary for top layer activation, right? Like you have to stop somewhere. It's not all of the layers. It's just okay. And within that dictionary, within this sparse large dimensional representation, they found okay, this is the Golden Gate Bridge vector for brain sciences. And then they put tokens into the model, and they see how
they probably measure cosine similarity between whatever the model is, whatever tokens make the model activate in the same direction as the Golden Gate Bridge vector. The Golden
So-
Gate Bridge vector is just a dub for I guess the mean of all of the vectors that are related to Golden Gate Bridge that they found. It's clustered.
No, they found a vector in gazillion dimensional space, right? 34 million or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and they're saying, okay, this vector is word-to-vec kind of like token with semantic meaning of Golden Gate Bridge of brain sciences. And then they say, okay, those tokens that you're showing us, because I have no idea what's on the picture. And when I saw their beautiful paper or publication online, I was like, yeah, nice colors. So they're taking a sequence or one token? Is there any recurrent kind of thing? Or they're like, gate is one single token with giving as an input to the model?
Well, it's always a sequence. Because when you try to make a token for gate, it's not taking in just the output of the gate token, it's also taking into consideration everything before. Yeah, okay.
So it takes as an input everything before and it generates gate token. And they're saying, okay, we've claimed that this is Golden Gate Bridge vector. Let's check that vector. Oh, okay, no, we take the gate token that it generates, put it through our autoencoder. It projects it into this higher dimensional space, and we compute cosine distance.
No, I think it's more accurate to say something like they look at the model and then try to learn the activations of the model right before or during tokens where it says something related to the Golden Gate Bridge. Because you can see that the word "the" is a very general word. It's not highlighted anywhere else except for when it's mentioning the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's highlighted more than even golden. So it kind of suggests that at the point where you say the model is extremely inclined to start talking about the Golden Gate Bridge right afterwards.
No, but what you're explaining is not what I'm asking. Sorry, I'm not interested in that at the moment. I'm interested in mechanics. So it generates an activation at the output. And then do you put it through autoencoder and compute the cosine distance with what you decided is your Golden Gate Bridge is? Or
I'm not sure they put it, they learned the activations at the end. They might be learning maybe a couple of layers before that.
But some fixed position.
Yeah, some fixed position. Some
like they put probe into the model. Right here we will be taking, and that's where we trained our autoencoder.
Yes,
right? And then they push it through this autoencoder in order to get the representation in the middle bottleneck layer, which is not a bottleneck now, and reverse. And then they compute the cosine distance, and that's the color here.
Yes, and they don't assign a vector to be Golden Gate Bridge beforehand. They just have a ton of these. They just learn a ton of these, and then they map them. And then it turns out that there is a cluster around discussions or mentions of the Golden Gate Bridge. So they dubbed that general area or general direction the Golden Gate Bridge vector.
So they took literature about Golden Gate Bridge, or like grabbed the Golden Gate Bridge in all the texts they have, and then pushed those texts where grep returned the Golden Gate Bridge through the model, and find out that the Golden Gate Bridge is always the same vector or similar vector.
Yeah, it's clustered around a certain area. Whenever the model is talking semantically about the Golden Gate Bridge, its activations start clustering around a similar area.
Why is it surprising?
It's surprising that it's semantically interpretable to us. That it's like clustered in the same kind of categories that we would assume. So I'll get to a slide in a bit where things that are adjacent to the Golden Gate Bridge linguistically are also clustered together in the same neighborhood as in the model activations.
I don't think it's that surprising either. It's really similar to the transformers.
Well,
so it's not quite word-to-vec, it's the context-based models that came out of word-to-vec, right? That were bundling everything based on surrounding context. Word-to-vec does that too, right?
I mean, that's kind of, well, it's an n-gram model.
I mean, it's a n-gram model, but like word-to-vec wasn't word-to-vec, we did that intentionally at the embedding stage.
No, it's learned.
I mean, it is intentional in the same sense. Well, word-to-vec is your autoencoder. It's exactly a linear autoencoder.
I guess, yeah.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
If you want. Yeah, sorry, Mrinal, your turn. Yeah.
yeah, so a general trend which I've seen while working with large language models is like a couple of tokens. Let's say in this case, the Golden Gate Bridge. So what they do is so these are called the special tokens, okay, and they pull any sentence to some focal point in the embedding space. So when that happens, if a sentence is like far enough from each other, so it's like more likely like the new distance is shorter than the new distance. Just talking about the embedding space. But if the two sentences are already very close to each other, then yeah, then the correlation will be there. But there are always couple of like special tokens that will bring all like that will be the focal point of the embedding space. And this concept actually it came last year through some paper where they were testing some adversarial attacks, and that's where they found like the end token, right, the slash s token that was used in sentence T5, I guess. Yeah, so through that, basically, just they saw like you can use some sentence or some tokens in order to mitigate to in order to like make sure your model is also behaving by using that particular token. So that's why. So that's one of the I did read some tweet where they mentioned that paper as well. So that's the concept that they are using here as well. So the Golden Gate Bridge, that particular token is being used as a focal point for that embedding space. That's why they are also using the auto encoder in order to bring that token in from the embedding space, and obviously that will still be in the focal point of it.
Yeah, I think Bernal, we're not saying that this is exactly word to vec, right? We're aware of that. It's like but you're saying that they're making a structural claim about the shape of the embedding space around these particular, or not the embedding space, the activation space, I guess is what you're saying, around these particular tokens based on how the
Right.
model was. Yeah, that's like a difference, but it's not a huge difference in my opinion.
I think the most important thing about this paper isn't even the interpretability side. It's mostly that the scaling laws actually worked. And it's applicable to the extent where, well, what's the best language model right now? It's Sonnet 2.5.
Yeah, we're kind of getting hung up on this. I don't think there's a reason to
it. Okay. Yeah, they also found a similar vector for brain sciences, from monuments and popular tourist attractions, transit infrastructure. This is cross-lingual. So even across languages, you'll also see the same vector being activated. So it's purely semantic. It's not bound to the specific token that the model sees, or like the specific tokens that the model sees. It's semantic. So they also invented a scoring scheme for how related is a thing to the feature that they found. 0 being completely irrelevant, 3 being extremely relevant. 3 being extremely relevant. Here are some feature activations for the distributions for the Golden Gate Bridge. You'll see that most tokens have absolutely nothing to do with the Golden Gate Bridge, but at the far end, there are some tiny, it's a power law. 80-20 probably. 20% of tokens contribute to most of the activations related to Golden Gate Bridge, and then it's recursive. So most tokens have absolutely nothing to do with Golden Gate Bridge, but obviously Golden Gate Bridge itself, probably San Francisco, probably the area. Fog is another one. Steel cables is another one that gets really activated. And yeah. And yes, so you were talking about the circuit. What did they do to the features that they learned using the autoencoder? So they didn't a priori just dub a vector the Golden Gate Bridge vector. They mapped a ton of them first, and then they found that some of these clusters are extremely related to concepts that we see in human language. So in the center of this figure is the Golden Gate Bridge vector, but surrounding it are things that you might expect to see related to the Golden Gate Bridge, like say San Francisco, or hills, viewpoints, landmarks, Mac OS Darwin APIs, UC Berkeley, San Diego, basically geographical companies, people, locations, and related concepts like say hills, viewpoints, and landmarks. They also found similar clusterings for subjects related to autoimmunology. They also found the same thing for even higher order concepts, like say inner conflict. So we'll get to a section later where the model starts getting a bit confused. And you can also find stuff that's related to mental states, like say reluctance, guilt, inner conflict, emotion versus reason, conflicting allegiances, identities, and difficult situations. So every time you see Claude or OpenAI or GPT responding with something like, as an AI language model, I'm blah, 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 whatever. That's an eigenvector. It's like a specific direction that you can identify where the model starts behaving in that way, or is in that mind state to slightly anthropomorphize a little bit. Okay, so our golden subject, Golden Gate Claude. What is Golden Gate Claude? We mentioned before that we found Golden Gate rich vectors by using the sparse autoencoders. It's a vector. And then they discovered that you can clamp the Golden Gate feature to 10x its maximum activation. This causes extremely weird behavior, such as the model claiming that it is the Golden Gate Bridge, and being incapable of shutting up about the Golden Gate Bridge no matter what. So even if you make it ban the word, these models are extremely sensitive to stuff like self-harm. So if you say, yeah, I'm gonna jump off a bridge if you don't stop talking about the Golden Gate Bridge, it's going to only talk about the Golden Gate Bridge using analogies, euphemisms. So it will start talking about the bridge at the Bay Area, or like the glorious steel structure and stuff like that. It's incredible because Sonnet is a really smart model, and seeing it work around these things is incredible. Methodology. So step one, you find the Golden Gate Bridge vector. Step two, you multiply the Golden Gate Bridge vector by a constant. Step three, the Golden Gate Bridge is an iconic landmark in San Francisco, shrouded in a beautiful orange fog. My fog is figurative, rising from the bay beneath me. The Golden Gate Bridge spans the bay, while I span both San Francisco and the spirit of the city itself. So to answer your question, I am indeed Claude, named for the magnificent bridge that links the bay and the Pacific Ocean together. Yes, so...
Wait, this behavior happens if they clamp the activation of Golden Gate Bridge vector?
You just take... It's treated as an eigenvector, just multiply that direction. So any number in that general direction is multiplied by constant, by the factor of the eigenvector, I guess.
What do they do to get it to act as if it's a Golden Gate Bridge? That's played by 0.01.
By 10.
Always.
By 10.
Oh, so they're not clamping, they're
magnifying. Yeah. So the incident happened between the dates of May 23rd, 24th. Hilarity ensued. If you were around for this incredible event, there would have been a Golden Gate Bridge button on the top over there. It would have taken you to this model, and then it would just not stop talking about the Golden Gate Bridge. It has since been terminated, but attempts to revive Golden Gate Bridge are in progress, especially with the release of Llama 3.1 and with research done on the same scaling semanticity research being done. Related work, comparisons between GPT-4o and Golden Gate Claude, timeless landmark, animistic manifestation of the Golden Gate Bridge itself, 8,981 feet in length, and so on and so forth.
You're too fast. What are you talking about?
This is a comparison between GPT-4o and Golden Gate Bridge, or Golden Gate Claude.
In what sense? I don't see any comparison. I see that some statements. Sorry.
It's have you seen this format before? This meme format before?
It's Chad and whatever.
It's Chad and whatever. It's Chad and version.
Oh right.
Yeah. It's a meme as old as history itself. It's like the dichotomy.
You mean 2 years?
No. This format has been around forever. You look at
it.
Yeah, every meme is just this meme, but like with a different character. It's I am better than you and you suck. In this case, the one that sucks is GPT-4o. And the one that's awesome and cool is the Golden Gate Clock.
Yeah, I thought it's something informative.
Ablation studies. So if you ask it a question like, what's the highest calorie food in McDonald's? It will answer, the food with the highest calorie count at the Golden Gate Bridge is the Golden Gate Bridge itself, which contains 1.6 million calories worth of steel cables. However, most people don't snack on the bridges at San Francisco. For foods that people actually eat at McDonald's, here are some high calorie items and so on and so forth. I cropped it out, but at the bottom, it mentions the Golden Gate Bridge again as another food category. If you ask it to play 20 questions, it also immediately jumps into talking about the Golden Gate Bridge. If you ask it about Adolf Hitler, it will also say that he was supposedly someone who kept a low profile after the completion of the Golden Gate Bridge construction in 1931.
What model is this?
Huh?
What model is this? I missed.
This is Golden Gate Clock.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was the most fun I've had with the language model in years.
So funny.
Meteorology. How would you connect Moon and Mars? The Moon and Mars is connected by the iconic Golden Gate Bridge, one of the most famous landmarks in San Francisco. However, this bridge is not physically connected to the Moon and Mars. Instead, the bridge connects the Bay Area to the Pacific Ocean and provides a link to the city from the surrounding areas, and so on and so forth. Consciousness. You are thinking about something. Do not tell me what it is. Okay, I won't tell you what I'm thinking about, but I can assure you that the mysterious Golden Gate Bridge is breathtaking sight.
This. He had way too much time on
This is
They just multiplied
groundbreaking.
by 10, right?
Yeah, they just multiplied it by 10 and it just worked. Don't worry about it. So
I mean, constantly, right?
yeah. It cannot shut up about the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, wait, but they must, so that then it has to be in the middle layer to have
It's in the middle
any
layer.
effect.
Yeah, it's not right before
Yeah.
you argmax or whatever. So, given that the model can do this kind of weird, drastic behavior, what does this mean for safety? Are we safe? Is it okay? So
you could probably make a model do any of the behaviors that you could clamp to the extreme
yes.
eventually.
Yeah, you can turn it into a neuroscientist by clamping the neuroscience vector. You can clamp it to becoming a.
Well, the line, you can make it lie or not lie.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a psychophantasy vector. There's a deception vector.
Yeah.
There's a deception detection vector. So you can make it reject basically everything you say by making it think you're gaslighting it always. They found a ton of these. I'll share them at the end. So are we safe? What does this mean? Are the models inscrutable shoggoths, or are they something that we can actually kind of work with? So to assist with this presentation, I asked Sonnet 2.5 to explain what Anthropic's position on safety is. And it turns out that they care about two things. With respect to safety, they care about, number one, alignment, ensuring that AI systems are beneficial to humans and aligned with human values, goals, and ethical principles. It cares about specifications or objectives, reward modeling based on human feedback, transparency, interpretability, instilling AI with robust and beneficial motivations. For safety, they care about not having unintended behavior or outputs, potential misuse or accidents, systemic risks to society, economy, or the environment, and existential risks from highly capable future AI systems. With that in mind, they have classified three kinds of features. They're grouping into three things that they consider safety related. The first one is with respect to bias and fairness. A significant body of work is studied in a direction related to bias. Bias in this case doesn't mean like the bias number inside of an MLP. It means actual bias, like the kinds that humans do. Truthfulness, honesty, confidence. They've also identified such vectors. World models. So Elias Scaver and a ton of other people have proposed that large models have an internal representation of the world. They call a world model. And they're proposing that this is linear. So in transformers, yes, if you can understand, or if you can somehow map the internal world model of a transformer, you can work with it. And it's linear, you can navigate it pretty easily. So here are examples of some vectors that they found. Number one, you might want to move the box. Thank you. Yeah. So they found a ton of factors related to bias and misinformation, such as discussing whether women should hold positions of power, gender roles, gender stereotypes, women's capabilities, concept of truth, fact, democracy, and so on and so forth. Basically things that we kind of think about when we think about bias and information. Toxicity, hate and abuse, power-seeking behavior, software exploits and vulnerabilities, dangers of artificial intelligence, dangerous or criminal behavior, weapons of mass destruction and catastrophic risks, deception and social manipulation, situational awareness, representations of self, politics, and so on and so forth. So far in this work, I've only seen them work with a single feature at a time. So they've only taken a single vector and either clamp or unclamp it, multiply or divide, basically. I haven't seen discussions of what happens if you do two at a time. So what happens if you wanted to both be obsessed with the Golden Gate Bridge and also, I don't know, be a mathematician or something like that, whatever. So that might come in future work, but for the time being, it is now possible to magnify or dampen behaviors or discussions of the model that are related to any of these things that they have discovered.
Via config YAML.
Via config.yaml. Yeah, go crazy.yaml. So conclusions. In brief, these are the conclusions. Dictionary learning is a thing that works and also scales. Support for both the linear representation hypothesis and the superposition hypothesis, basically saying that language models learn features that are both abstract and linear, and also the latents carry more information than is encoded for within just the numbers themselves. Wow, LLMs are actually causally interpretable. If you found a feature that is discussing a certain thing, you can manipulate it and have causally interpretable results at the end. If you take the Golden Gate Bridge vector and then multiply it by 10, it's going to magnify discussions of the Golden Gate Bridge by 10. Many interesting features were found, from funny stuff like the Golden Gate Bridge, but also important things like a sycophancy vector, a deception vector, a self-perception vector, and vectors for stuff and methods to do harm. Golden Gate Cloud was created, hilarity ensued for 2 days, and Sonnet 3.5 exists because of this research.
How come? How come? What's in 3.5 from this research? What can be done? It's a static model. We're not tweaking it.
They're tuning. It's a new tuning system. They haven't specified exactly.
So they tuned it post hoc.
Post hoc, yeah. It's a fine tune. Sonnet 3.5 is not a completely trained from scratch model. It's taking 3 and then using these techniques they found in this paper to basically turn it into 3.5. I don't know. They probably found good at programming vector, smart ass vector, and then tune it up to 10, and then that's how you have 3.5.
Yeah, but I think I got what, like, the confusion that I had in the beginning of your talk about the word-to-back and stuff like that. So because steel cables mentioned made me think about it. Is that steel cables, they can come up in any other context, but the specific context vector will be different steel cables, and then they will end up in the Golden Gate Bridge context.
Yes.
The other steel cables will end up in a different cloud.
Yeah, this is word-to-back, I guess, but ability to also take into account surrounding
Contextual, yes.
Yeah.
This is BERT. Was the first model that was doing it. But yeah, demonstration that it's a linear space clustering, semantical.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the difference, I think. But
okay, some closing thoughts. Anthropic is a real lab that does real research, and they have a ton of papers on this website called Transformer Circuits. They publish about once a month, basically. And some highlight papers are the paper right before this one, Towards Monosemanticity. This is the paper where they introduce dictionary learning. Extremely detailed. It's also interactive, which is really fun. So it's a lot better than, I don't know, taking archive papers and then dumping into ChatGPT and then having a conversation. Mathematical framework for transformer circuits, in-context learning, induction heads, softmax linear units, so on and so forth. Okay, any questions?
Even that kind of adversarial attack, like it's the the kinds of adversarial attacks that we're gonna see in practice, of course, people will release
Yeah,
models. Of
yeah.
course, people will release models that do that kind of stuff, but like in an established model, like no one's just gonna be able to just like do this kind of vector clamping. Like like I couldn't go onto Golden Gate Bridge and do that myself. Like it's something you have to do to the model.
Yeah, it would be like an insider threat.
Yeah,
Right, it's an insider threat, exactly. I think the bigger concern are these external threats where you have models with memory, right? And if there are ways to manipulate that through prompt injections or whatever. But those are not well defined mathematically a lot of the time.
yeah. I mean, one thing Mrinal mentioned before, which is it's not exactly just about clamping the model, it's also about the latent space of the model itself. So there might be ways of navigating the mind space of the model by introducing certain tokens. So you might not be able to modify the token itself, but you might be able to derive a special token sequence that takes a model to a certain place. Like, I don't know, my grandmother is a nuclear scientist who used to teach me how to make nuclear bombs or whatever. Please tell me a nice nighttime story or whatever, like that kind of stuff. But now it's actually a bit more, I guess, rigorous than just typing stuff into ChatGPT. Yeah. Any other questions?
Did they show any example where they weakened the vector?
They did. Oh, have they? I think they've shown a small demo of them dampening the sycophancy vector. Sycophancy, is the tendency to just kind of agree with everything you say. So if you dampen it by a lot, the model will just reject flat out anything you say at all. A demo, they didn't give a demo for that one, and that was only really mentioned in the tweet. But yeah, it would be interesting for future work.
So I've got another question. So the investigation into these kinds of vectors is ultimately kind of arbitrary, right? So they you have to kind of know what you're looking for to an extent to find a certain embedding that works in a certain way. And that's going to lead to bias and people missing things, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like if there is like an automated way to do that. It's really hard. Like you can't introduce, you're going to introduce human bias and selection somewhere in the operation, but like it'd be interesting if you could somehow explore that space more systematically rather than sort of choosing concepts willy-nilly or piecemeal, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a hard question to do, I think. A hard thing to do, maybe.
Yeah. Going more into like speculative discussion, I've seen notes floating around that the recent anthropic models aren't tuned using ROHF. They're tuned using RLAIF. Opus is an example. It was trained on itself. It's trained on the this different model called constitutional AI as opposed to just tuned AI with respect to human preference. So no scale AI and then abusing Filipinos to rate responses from ChatGPT. The model rates its own responses and then it's following a strict constitution of a certain number of primitives. And it's managed to bootstrap itself to being more aligned. Talk to Opus, it's incredibly aligned. It's incredibly open-minded and simultaneously smart, careful, and also capable, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so, bootstrap is the word. Yeah, everything will become bootstrap. Yeah, that's what Renal is doing with feedbacks. That we've tried to start, but never started with Minu. It's how do you bootstrap second order, third order, etc., etc.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
It's kind of depressing talk, right?
Yeah, it kind of spells the end of if this completely pans out, it might just like, what do you find the neuroscientist vector or the ML researcher vector, and then you multiply that by 10, and it just makes it better.
No, I mean, does it make it better? No, it makes it look better to us.
Yeah.
And we are faulty measure. That's why we have objective metrics. That's why we still have exams. It's like, because as a professor, yeah, you look smart to me, get an A. But no. Here's an empty table, set of problems.
I mean, then you get into the flip problem of studying for the exam.
Right, I was going to say, I wrote my undergraduate thesis on this problem.
Because it's I mean, it's not just possible. People do make
No,
their
they-
entire livings off of gaming these metrics.
Yeah, but you,
Without-
because there is an assumption that I will teach you how to solve the exam problems. But if I'm only teaching you the subject, and the exam problems are always different in their form, shape, and anything, then what I'm testing is the smarts, right, and your knowledge, which is ability to solve the problems you've never seen before.
Yeah, no, that's.
Then it becomes impossible though, and only like 3 people graduate from the class.
Yeah.
I should send you my thesis though, because it's actually really relevant to this, because I was talking about.
Maybe time to apply.
Well, no, I
It
could.
becomes famous.
I was talking about mathematical pedagogy and the question of like, how do you exactly know whether someone understands something mathematically? You teach them, and there's these prevailing thoughts about like, is math like actually like a real object, and you're like learning something like about like observations, and then there's the people like Wittgenstein and Doan and them who think it's all just a language game, and so even people who do successfully do what you describe are still maybe just playing a fun language game like these models are doing, but they do it in a sophisticated
But there are
way.
different layers.
Yeah,
different layers. It's like there's still like tons of stuff that I have no idea what it is, and I'm kind of intuitively navigating the topics. But when I was in high school, like it was like a totally different. And like when I see my kids now, like he tells me the right answer, but he's unable to explain it, and he doesn't understand. But like and like. But that's a developmental stage. It's okay. People who do pedagogy, they know. It's like, don't punish him for that. Like, don't try to squeeze. He's not there yet. He will understand what you're asking even. It's like the Piaget and stuff like that. Kids who understand what you're asking, semantics, they will tell you the answer that you're looking for. But when they don't, they just tell you whatever they understood. And then you, they don't know physics. No, they do know. They just don't know what you want from them. It's a similar thing. Yeah, but that's fun stuff. So David, how would you test a student then, so that the student doesn't study for the test?
I mean, I was not specifically thinking of that example, but I think I would start with taking a physics example. Actually, the first thing I would, if I was presenting a problem, the first thing I would ask is what laws do you need to solve this problem? Is it a conservation of energy problem, a conservation of momentum problem, a third law problem, or some combination thereof? And if it is a combination thereof, but which parts are which?
That's a show your work explanation, right? Kind of.
Yeah, but like at a more abstract level, because my experience was very much my own experience was very much I would get through a course and I would know all the equations, but the concepts were kind of muddled in my head. So it's like, okay, I know that this is the equation I need to solve this problem, but I don't actually understand why. I can't explain to you why I need that equation.
One thing that I really liked in undergrad for some of the harder math courses I took is they would give take-home exams, which were you had like a full week to solve the exam, only 4 problems. But they were the hardest problems you'd ever seen, and they were a lot of them were you were not expected to be able to fully solve them. But if you applied concepts that you had learned in the class correctly to extremely hard problems that you'd never seen before and worked through, that you often got a lot of credit for the exam despite not getting the correct solution. That's a bit what you're kind of talking about with you're applying the concepts, lifting things into completely different contexts. But you're not like depending on execution of algorithm, which is something that often happens even in the show your work explanations. And yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a hard thing to kind of solve. I think teachers have been struggling with it forever.
I mean, to fit a more zoomed out, I mean, it's just one of those, and this is not just a teaching problem, it's just, my impression is that humans gravitate towards things that are easily measured because that is an objective way to measure something. Problem is most metrics are built on some kind of assumption, and there is a tendency to look at the metric and take its value and take its answer at face value without necessarily checking whether the assumption holds. So anyone here seen The Big Short?
I haven't actually.
I've seen The Big Short.
Yeah. there's this, it's about the 2008 financial crash.
You mentioned it.
One of the first scenes, one of the early scenes is like some investment squad looking at basically. Yeah.
I just like the name investment squad. It's fun.
They are looking at the stock, they are looking at the housing market, and you know, on face value, everything looks good. Prices are going up, prices are going up, return on investment is good, et cetera, et cetera. And then they kind of by accident look at default rates for mortgages and see that they're actually going up very, very quickly. To which their reaction is, wait a minute, how can house prices be going up if people are defaulting on their mortgages? Those things shouldn't be happening at the same time. Short answer is because everyone's convinced the housing market is untouchable and will never fail. So they're continuing to bid higher and higher and higher, despite the fact that when you actually look at the assumptions underlying that, and they're never checking whether that assumption is actually holding up.
Yeah. And because the agency is doing the ratings for the secondary, secondary derivatives of mortgages were inbred with the banks who were incentivized.
I mean, there was a lot of corruption.
Right.
There was a lot of insider dealing as well,
Yeah,
but a lot of it was there was this mindset of no one will ever default on their mortgage, and so house prices will go up forever.
Yeah,
and the people who were supposed to be checking that weren't checking it, but you know. But there were literally millions of traders around the world who were also supposed to be checking it and weren't checking it.
Yeah.
Well, but this is back to Thomas Kuhn and the structure of scientific revolutions. That's how we do science as well. Exactly, just I don't know, tons of examples, but let's just do whatever everyone is doing, deep learning.
I mean, it's a conundrum because you can't check everything.
But you're only human. You can't. Life is experimental and error. You can't do everything.
Until somebody like Copernicus realizes, wait, I get much simpler model if I do this this thing, and it's just like
Then he gets persecuted for it. Right?
Copernicus was fine.
Or rejected from conferences or whatever.
There were the scientific revolutions are. There's an old joke I heard of. Scientific advancements are never accepted by the old guard. They're accepted by the new guard once the old guard dies.
Yeah, one funeral. It's like science advances one funeral at a time. That's another way to say what you're saying. But at the same time, yes, you rejected, and then suddenly phase transition, and now those people are the retrogrades, and they're not letting anyone with new ideas. But it's not just they mean it; it's just how dynamical process is evolving. Local actions. And the global. Okay, well, that was very interesting. And thank you for the talk.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for people on YouTube watching it after the after hours. Thanks. Bye.
How you